What's up everybody, it's me E-Man, and today we're going to review Justice League. Hey, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And if you enjoy this review, don't forget to share it with your friends. With that said, let's get into a quick intro. Feeling inspired by Superman's selfless act of heroism, Batman and Wonder Woman seek to put together a powerful team of allies to face a larger threat. Okay, enough of that. Let's get right into the good.
The good.
One thing I appreciated about this film is that it didn't waste any time in terms of getting right into the core of the story. There were very few moments where it felt like the film dragged or was taking too long, so even though the movie is 2 hours long, the pacing was done very well. Within the film, we get to explore some philosophical differences between some of the main characters. As with any team-up movie, it was enjoyable to see how this new superhero team could navigate through their issues and overcome them to face a greater threat. Now, despite the fact that Joss Whedon was brought in to do a couple reshoots for this movie, I'm still going to give Zack Snyder credit for a lot of the cinematography and the action and the visuals that were done in this film. This is because the first half of the film is very reminiscent of both the look and the feel of Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel. More specifically, I really want to highlight some of the great motion effects that were done in the movie. There was a perfect blend of really fast-paced action sequences that included just the right timing to infuse slow motion effects. Some of those special effects really stand out in some of the battle scenes, as you've probably already seen in the trailers. It was also really cool to see a number of Easter eggs in one of the major conflicts, so be sure to pay attention when a lot of the fighting is going on. As for the main characters in this film, a lot of them have a positive that they can add to their win column. Ben Affleck as Batman gave a satisfying performance despite not having any standout scenes. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman carried over a level of greatness from her previous Wonder Woman film. She was definitely a more prominent and equal character to that of Batman. Justice League did a really good job of showing us that she's still an iconic hero on all levels. Jason Momoa as Aquaman simply works. He's owning the role and definitely redefining and undoing all the stigmas that surrounded the Aquaman character. Ezra Miller as the Flash showed us some potential within his character towards the end of the movie to hopefully develop into something deeper in his future solo movie. When it came to Cyborg, I was satisfied with his treatment as a strong supporting character. Lastly, I really liked what they did with Steppenwolf in this movie. He consistently posed a genuine threat to all the characters as the primary villain of the film. And by the way, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, the final end credit scene of this movie is great. But enough of that, let's get on to the bad.
The bad.
Hold on to your butts.
Okay, so where do we start? The movie feels like it has two completely different tones that just don't really blend very well. However, the problem here is the fact that a movie at this level, we really shouldn't be able to notice these types of differences so easily. Now, I'm gonna make an assumption and believe that many of the humorous shots that were added into this movie were probably Joss Whedon's idea. If that is the case, it would probably best explain the horrible editing and selection of some of the comic relief in this movie. For instance, during the final conflict in this movie, you know, like when things are really intense and, you know, the danger is at an all-time high, they actually take a break to go do something else, but have fun while doing it. All that did was just disrupt the sense of urgency that situation was really trying to evoke. All for the sake of trying to have more fun put into the movie. It was unnecessary. Unfortunately, while some jokes did hit in this movie, other jokes completely bombed or missed. It just felt as though some of these jokes were the deleted scenes that never actually made it out of the movie. I mean, for example, Aquaman has a very funny situation that happens later in the film, but rather than letting that joke be funny within itself, all of a sudden we've got the Flash coming in saying something really dumb, and it just ruins the moment. But let's take a moment here and talk about the Flash. To put it bluntly, he was really annoying. He was purely there for comic relief, and his jokes and comments were not always entertaining. Despite getting a chuckle or rise here or there, his comments and jokes just felt forced. He was absolutely nothing like the character in any of the main continuities, and even if he were, this was a pretty poor version of the Flash to put on the big screen. Ezra Miller is a good actor, but the way that this Flash was written, it was just disappointing. Now, it did appear that this Barry Allen might be on the spectrum, but either way, they made his character seem as though he was like a 12-year-old rather than being an intellectual that just so happens to have ADD. Not to mention the fact he looked so weird when he ran sometimes. At one time, I even thought that he was running underwater or something. Like, who runs like this? Now, furthering my Whedon assumption here, I couldn't help but notice a lot of the comparisons and tired tactics that were used in the film. It almost seemed as though Whedon grabbed from his Age of Ultron bag of tricks and just recycled them for this movie. If that Martha scene from Batman vs. Superman might have rubbed you the wrong way, then I have to assume that the sun is getting real low moment is also going to bother people as well. Now, to get a bit more technical, the CGI in this movie was kind of atrocious at times. I know that Henry Cavill had some sort of contract negotiations with another movie that required for him not to shave. Regardless, the CGI that was used to cover up his facial hair, it was bad. It looked like he had Botox shots put around his mouth and they just hadn't healed up yet. Beyond that, the CGI was still rather messy in some of the fight scenes. I do not say this to portray the idea that I expected top-notch and flawless special effects. The problem is that I shouldn't mistake some of the action scenes in Justice League with the cutscenes from a video game with lesser graphics. In other words, if I'm not going to give a pass to poor CGI in movies like The Scorpion King or Doom, then I'm not going to give a pass to Justice League for doing the same thing. Finally, I'm really not a fan of what they did with Steppenwolf in the final act of this movie. It really just came off as to be kind of corny, and it left a wide open opportunity to push the story forward even more. But you can find out more of that in my spoiler discussion later on. But enough of that, let's get right into the reason.
The reason.
Okay, now there's a lot of background and context that really needs to be understood about this movie. As some of you may already know, this movie project was disrupted with director Zack Snyder's unfortunate family situation. That opened up the door to having Joss Whedon step in to direct and finish up some of the parts of the movie. This led to a lot of reshoots and changes made to the original film. Now, despite any of my past criticisms of Snyder, I actually would have preferred if he had finished this film, even if that meant to delay it and push the film date back. But I know that probably wasn't going to happen, but at the very least we could have had a more consistent tone and vision within Justice League. Another piece of context to know about this film is that, well, it was pretty reactionary. Rather than taking any significant risks with this film, Justice League was a very safe comic book movie. And it's just my opinion that this film is just very reactionary to all the criticisms that Batman vs. Superman had to endure. So the movie studios probably just had a checklist of, oh, has to be more funny. Okay, let's add some humor. Oh, we need more Wonder Woman. Got that? Good. They don't like dark tones. No problem. Regrettably, the movie studios appear to have acquiesced to almost every complaint people might have had. Personally, I don't think all those complaints were founded and justified, but whatever. All this did was just compound an already fractured situation with Snyder's early leave of the project. You know, a lot of people have been asking me, like, what did I think about Justice League? And the best analogy I can come up with is Justice League is like a big cake. The studios and the directors, they had all the best and freshest ingredients. You know, like superheroes that are household names. But they put all the milk, the eggs, the sugar, the flour, all into a big mixing bowl. Stirred it up, put it in a pan, and stuck it in the oven. When it was done, they pulled it out, let it cool off, and decorated it with some frosting. Voila! We have our super cake. However, in the case of Justice League, they didn't stir the batter smoothly enough to blend in those ingredients. They also set the oven to the wrong temperature. So now when you take a bite out of that lovely looking piece of cake, you notice that it's a little uncooked in the middle. Oh, and that crunch in your mouth that you just felt? That's just a small piece of eggshell that was left in the batter. That is Justice League. Now there's another point that I really want people to understand, and that point is that we can no longer compare DC movies to Marvel movies. The standards are just very different now. Marvel had to make multiple movies to basically build up a lot of lesser known characters. DC has a very nice luxury of not having to do that because they have very famous and well-known characters already. I mean, if people hear that there's a Batman or Superman movie, they're going. But if you say there's an Ant-Man movie, there's some questions. So DC doesn't have to rush a thing, but unfortunately Justice League does feel like a rushed product. So did Batman vs Superman. Personally, I think it's time to reset the franchise. I just think that the current path that they've laid out has been exhausted. Wonder Woman gave a lot of hope that this entire franchise was finally going to go in the right direction. Justice League felt like the franchise took a half step back. And please don't misconstrue any of my criticisms as me just being a hater. I'm a fan of both comic companies and comic movies in general. I want all these comic book movies to succeed. I think we all do. But with that, I really believe that we need to stop lowering the bar so low for these movies just for the sake of fun or just for the sake of seeing our heroes on the big screen. I mean, it's 2017. We've come way too far and seen way too many good movies to be accepting subpar level production with A-list quality characters. I mean, we deserve better. We just have to start being honest with these movie studios. We have to be honest with each other when we're having these little debates about these movies. And lastly, we have to be honest with ourselves. If a movie is great, let's praise it and give it all the credit it deserves. And if it's bad and has problems, we need to be honest about that. So without further ado, when it comes to the rating of Justice League, I've got to give it a 7 out of 10. Despite everything that I said, Justice League is still worth watching. Besides, you're too deeply invested and probably very curious about this movie not to go see it anyway. Whether you agree with my assessment or not, none of that is really gonna matter. You're still gonna go watch this movie. To me, Justice League is probably better than Suicide Squad, but not better than Wonder Woman. And unfortunately, I think it had to be better than Wonder Woman for it to really be a success. Either way, feel free to go watch Justice League at your local theater. And be sure to come back and let me know exactly what you thought about it. Well, thank you very much for staying with me this long. This is a much longer review than I would have liked to make, but it's Justice League. We gotta do what we gotta do. Stay tuned. I do have a spoiler discussion. It's basically my reaction right after the movie, and I'm joined by a fellow film critic, Don Shanahan of everymoviehasalesson.com, and we talk about everything about the movie in a whole bunch more detail. So if you don't care about spoilers, feel free to check that video out. If you have seen Justice League, please let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Don't forget to like my Facebook fan page because I got way more content on there for you. But in the meantime, I've got more videos and reviews to do. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.